Joining us now, Peter Cleary, a spokesman for the Anti-Harper Vote Swap Facebook group and a student at the University of Ottawa. Welcome to Toronto. Nice to have you on TVO tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Peter, tell us first of all, what is vote swapping?
Vote swapping, or more commonly known as vote pairing, is where when one person votes for the party, which is probably their second choice, in return for somebody else in a different riding voting for that person's first choice. And it really came out of California in the 2000 presidential election, where you had very tight districts between George Bush and Al Gore. So Nader supporters would vote for Al Gore if somewhere else somebody would vote for Nader in order to keep that 5% popular vote threshold up so he could receive finances in the next election.
Mm-hmm. The gist of this, though, I gather, is don't necessarily vote for who you want, but it's strategic voting to try to keep somebody else out. Is that the idea?
It's organized strategic voting. And I think that's what brings us to another level, is because never before has there really been a grassroots movement behind strategic voting and very organized in targeting specific ridings, saying here's where we could possibly make some changes or not. It's essentially the same thing that's been happening over the past few decades in Canada, where people talk about it amongst their friends and in their living room, but instead we brought it to the internet and we brought a little bit of an organization behind it.
Everything is on the internet now. Michael, roll these pictures here. Peter, why don't we have you talk over these and show us? This is the site, right? Or this is one of them anyway.
Well, this is just the basic Facebook site where we're able to set up a group so people can kind of get the basic information on what's happening. And they're able to have input. There's a wall there where people can discuss what they think about it, some people positive, some people negative. There's contact information where people can actually have an application to submit their information saying, I'm in this area and I'm interested in voting in this party. And what we do is we give examples on how it works for people. They submit their information and then we connect them with somebody else after this Thursday, actually. And that's the key, is that people will have a conversation together with somebody else regarding whether or not they want to do this. It's like dating, we're finding a match for somebody, but it's more political, I guess. And they'll talk about it, and they'll decide whether or not this is something they're interested in after we put them in touch.
Do you belong to a political party?
I do belong to
Which one?
I'm part of the Liberal Party.
You're a Liberal. So, but there are going to be occasions where you actually want people to vote New Democrat.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because you think the New Democrat has a better chance of beating Harper's Conservatives.
Absolutely. I'm not sure whether or not the Liberal Party likes me right now or not, but to be honest, this is something that I got involved in because I do not want to see Stephen Harper become Prime Minister, or at least not have a majority government. That's why we're doing this, and that's the mentality behind all of this. And it speaks a lot to the movement that this never kind of took place in Canada until we had a government like Stephen Harper and until we had the internet. So we have all these people across Canada, generally younger, but a lot of people who are actually in their 30s and 40s getting into this as a united front against Stephen Harper from all parties.
This is not something I think you just pointed out that the Liberal Party is necessarily nuts about, right?
No, I don't know if they're nuts about it. But I have a feeling they can benefit just as equally as the NDP can benefit from something like this.
So it all happens kind of independent of the backroom boys and girls who
absolutely
have their own issues.
Well, and that's how we're able to talk to people, I think, a little bit more honestly, a little bit more earnestly, because we're able to say, hey, we're not out to be elected here. We're not out for a job.
How come I've seen a few other sites about this. I got an email the other day from somebody who works at, well, I shouldn't say, but anyway, she's involved in the environmental movement and trying as well to kind of rock the vote, as it were, against. Why are all these things against the Conservatives, I guess, is what I'm asking here.
For me personally, I looked to my, and I think this will transcend for some other people, I think the economy has become the big issue right now. In my riding alone, we've lost plants across the board. This morning, we had another, I think it was 1,100 the TSX dropped. These things have kind of started...
Well, it came back a bit.
Well, it came back, and it's down 5.8% or so. But these things which have affected us so locally, there's a very local effect to all of this for everybody who's involved, where they can actually physically point to something and say, this is why I'm doing this. This is how I'm affected in my area. And it is the economy. We have a lot of students who are having trouble finding jobs, and there's a lot of students on Facebook who are losing this. We're having a lot of students, again, who have their family based all in GM, working at GM. I have friends, I grew up around Oshawa and Cobourg, and I have friends whose parents worked at GM, their grandparents worked at GM, and they work at GM. So there's actually quite a few of my friends that I know of that were put out of work. And same with when all the I think it was the manufacturing car plants in Toronto, the conglomerate of them all, they closed down. I actually had several friends lose jobs there too.
And this is all Harper's fault?
Well, it's not necessarily Harper's fault, but it's a government that's in there right now that we feel, Matt Savelli, who created the group, myself, we feel aren't policies that are doing the right job.
Okay, tell us this. Does this work?
Does this work? It works. It doesn't work when it's a broad all-Canada thing. And the reason why is that this is meant to target specific ridings that can change. We look at Tony Clement's riding, which lost from
Harry Sound Muskoka?
yeah, that lost 20 to 30 votes last
28
time.
votes.
28 votes.
Clement won by 28.
One. Sorry, I'm Freudian talking right there.
The idea is presumably that you want all those people who voted New Democrat to vote Liberal there because the Liberal has the best chance to beat him.
Yeah, and then in Quebec City, actually, there's another riding, Louis Hubert, which is also a very close one, which last time the Conservatives won by 108 votes. So we're looking at these ridings here, and we've listed all the ridings that are very close. And then Thursday, once we actually get all the information, we're going to put everybody in touch. And we're going to try and targeting as many of these ridings that are possible where we can have a difference. That's the only way it works.
I remember in the 2000 and, which one was it? Harper's first as Prime Minister, 2006 election, where Buzz Hargrove got up there before the Canadian Auto Workers Convention, and he said, people, we got to vote strategically to make sure Stephen Harper doesn't win. And he said, where the Liberals have a chance to win, vote for them. Where the Democrats have a chance to win, vote for them. And nobody got it. And what everybody thought they heard him say was, vote Liberal.
And I think it didn't work that way. I think the new president of the new president actually came out a lot more effective. Came out right away saying, I'm supporting the NDP. But if there is an NDP candidate who can't win, I think he just presented it a little bit different. He came out first and foremost, I'm an NDP supporter.
But what happened was a lot of Conservatives ended up winning because the ridings where the New Democrat had a chance to beat them, the New Democrat total was too low. The Liberal total was up because everybody thought Buzz said, vote Liberal.
Well, I think that's why we need this organized push behind it, where we can actually present all of the information. Voteforenvironment.ca, I think that's the one environmental group that you were talking about. They're breaking down all of the polling information that is being presented, not just one poll, but every single one, to offer the most reliable information on who is the most likely candidate to win. And that's the information that we're pulling from all the sites, because we don't want to trick people. And we're not tricking people because we're not deciding who votes where. We're putting people in touch and they have to decide themselves. We're just offering a little bit more information to help people decide where they want to vote.
Let me read you a quote from somebody with the McMaster Students Union. It goes like this. The idea of vote swapping goes against the principles of democracy in this country. It's not illegal to encourage a person to vote a certain way. This happens all the time with political parties, unions, social groups, even religious groups. What is immoral, this person says, however, is politicizing the process and excluding others, like in the anti-Harper group, that's you. If people are afraid of a majority government that they do not agree with ideologically, they should act against it by encouraging people at the local level to make the right choice. Are there legal or ethical considerations here that you are kind of nudging up against?
Well, there's no legal considerations, and the ethical considerations, I don't think there's any ethical consideration. I'll give you a few examples. The first one is that people here are voting on a party basis. They're not voting on an individual candidate basis. There was a professor.
We don't know that.
Well, generally, if they want to swap their vote or pair their vote, they're not voting for the individual candidate in the other riding.
Okay.
And what they're doing is they're voting on more of a party line. They're voting for a party, a left-wing party, or a center-left between the Liberals, NDP, and the Greens, more Liberals and NDP. I was speaking with a Conservative candidate actually last week, and I won't say who because it was actually in a university class, so I don't want to embarrass. But we were talking about the fact that when he ran, he felt 1 in 10 of the people who voted for him because of him. The other 9 voted for him based on either the party or the leader. And that's a common trend where you'll have people throughout their lives.
Doesn't make that much.
Well, and that's exactly it. There's people throughout their lives who will vote just for the party or just for the leader. Yeah. And there's not much of a difference between somebody wanting to have their vote for a party rather than the local candidate here. And when it comes to, and the person there is absolutely right, the only benefit when it comes to talking about benefits and endorsements, the only benefit that somebody will have when they look at strategic voting is that their desired electoral outcome will take place.
How do you know if this will work?
It is going to be very interesting to see on October 15th if it works or not. For all we know, it won't work. But this is something that we want to try as a way to get engaged in the political process. Because
but you can't just say, like, if Harper ends up with a minority government on the 14th, you can't really take credit for it, can it?
No.
By the same token, if he wins a majority government, you can't say that your effort was a failure.
No.
So how do you know if the vote swapping thing actually happened?
I don't think we will know unless we take a look at the specific ridings that we'll release after Thursday, where we think will have the most effect, and that'll be the targeted ridings. But the one great thing about this, and this is why we're all very excited to be part of it, is that it's bringing a little bit of a political discourse along with it. And that's what's the most important thing. We're not really looking at following the news based on the polls, because we find polls make the news every single day now, and the news may be constructed around that. But for this, what people are doing is that they're actually able to have a conversation about the policies. And especially when we're talking about somebody from the Liberal Party and somebody from the NDP party talking about pairing a vote, those are two parties that don't generally want to work with each other, because there's a general, Liberals take all our votes, NDP take all our votes. So when two people are put in touch, when they are giving each other's emails and contact information, they have a political discussion about why they may consider doing this. What's your policy on this? What do you believe here?
Yeah, but no disrespect intended. I don't think people talk policy when they do this. It's all about, we hate Harper, we got to stop him. Isn't that generally what it comes down to?
I would generally disagree, because being on Facebook right now, and Facebook's being great, it doesn't cost any money for us to run. I've started to do it, and I know a lot of my friends have started to do it, started blogging, started actually having arguments on there about the actual policies. And when someone starts going into key messages of a party, say, whoa, 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 whoa. Start talking about what you think about. And on the Facebook site, people can look. There's discussion page after discussion page after discussion page, and thousands of wall posts about people talking about what they think. And I think it is actually made a little bit of a difference when it comes there. It comes to that.
Here's again one of the other. I understand what you're trying to do, but one of the problems people have always said with strategic voting is A, it's complicated. Perhaps you've gotten around that with this.
It's still complicated.
It's still complicated. B, how do I know if I want to? Your person. If I want to stop the Conservative, how do I know who to vote for? Because there are dozens of ridings in this province where the Liberals and the NDP may be fairly competitive with each other. And how do you know which is the party that you should strategically vote for if you're trying to deny the Conservative the seat? How do you answer that question?
Well, I don't think we can have an effect on those. Quite bluntly, I don't think we can have an effect on a three-way race. I don't think we can have effect on a two-way race between the Liberals and the NDP, because we really don't mind at that point, because we don't want the Conservative. But when it comes to a three-way race, we really can't have an effect on there. Because again, organized strategic voting, vote pairing, only works when we target specific ridings that's between a Conservative and somebody else. It doesn't work across the board, and we can't argue for who people should choose in a three-way race.
Let me give you an example. I mean, in Essex riding, southwestern Ontario, the Liberals and the NDP were practically tied in the last election. So if you're asking people to vote strategically to deny the Conservative MP a re-election, who do you tell them to vote for?
Well, that's where the Vote for Environment stuff comes in, where they're actually putting together all the polls from all the different polling companies.
But what if the two opposition parties are tied? Then what do you do?
Well, again, it's an election. Who knows what to do? We're trying to target as many ridings as we possibly can. And there's 41 battleground ridings, which we have targeted online. For those other ridings where we don't know, we're not going to tell people how to vote, because we don't know.
This, of course, at the end of the day, is based on an honor system.
Absolutely.
I promise to vote for my second choice because you're going to vote for my choice in pairing up the ridings where it makes sense. What if you get scammed?
Well, that's why we put people in touch with each other. They actually have to have a conversation with the other person to figure out if that's true. We're very good at being able to look at somebody's information and see whether or not it's real or not. That's why we have countless amounts of hours being put in by volunteers, going through thousands of people giving us their information to be put in touch with somebody else.
Because if the Conservatives are sophisticated enough, they could kind of,
that's true.
Tap into this thing.
That's true.
Claim to be people who could.
And that's why the people are being put in touch with each other. And that's a necessary component to have that political discourse, to actually talk about whether or not this is something they're interested in doing. And it's absolutely necessary to make sure that people aren't worried about fraud or anything like that. But when it comes down to it, when we look at vote pairing, when somebody enters the voter's booth in an election, no matter what, they're voting strategically. No matter what. They're voting based on everything they've heard throughout the election to help establish their beliefs and how they're voting. And this is one thing that we're doing. This is one thing that we're talking about, trying to give people a little bit more information, a little bit of different options.
I'm not sure about that. Strategic voting implies you're not voting for your first choice, but you're voting to perhaps stop something or help something that, that deals with a second concern of yours.
Preferably help.
Preferably help. What's wrong at the end? For those people who say at the end of the day, A, this is too damn complicated, and B, why not just do it the old-fashioned way where you go into the ballot booth and you vote for your first choice and let the chips fall where they may?
Because I think a lot of us want to try. We want to try to do something that we think is right to stop Stephen Harper. I think a lot of this is a lot of people, young people, who aren't happy with the political discourse. There's people who are for this electoral system, and there's people who are against this electoral system together. But it's a lot of people who want to try doing something, and Facebook has allowed us to do something very, very different. The internet has allowed us to do something very, very different. And it's very healthy in one way, that people are able to actively engage in a very different way.
Last question. Do you have any sense at the end of the day how many votes you hope to influence?
Well, right now we have about 3,000 paired. And we're hoping by Thursday to have an additional 1,000 to 2,000, but we won't know until after we look at the numbers.
Well, if you do manage to control 3,000 votes, that could affect, I mean, it could affect a dozen ridings. Who knows?
And that's why we really need to look at the ridings to figure out where we can have an effect. Because we all know Stephen Harper with the majority government, I think he will do even less by eliminating even more, and that's why we want to do this.
Gotcha. Peter Cleary, good of you to come to TVO tonight and share this idea with us. Thank you.